Right, and we're live. Hello, everyone.
And we're live.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Point by Point Tennis Podcast. We are your hosts, Carlos and Jishnu. And on today's show, we have a big one to talk about today. It is the changing of the guard, some might say, in which Carlos Alcaraz dethrones Novak Djokovic in Wimbledon to win his first Wimbledon title and end the streak of Wimbledon title for Novak Djokovic. So that is a historic moment. What do you say, Jish?
It is. Yeah.
And I'm super excited to go into this today. Alcaraz won in 5 sets over Novak Djokovic, in what seemed to be an impossible comeback, given the history between these two at the Grand Slam stage, which we'll definitely jump into, and the fact that this match started very one-sidedly in favor of Djokovic. So, incredible performance from Carlos Alcaraz to continue his rise and really live up to all of the heavy expectations that have been put on his shoulders. So we're going to talk about that final. I think we're going to spend most of our time today talking about that because this is one of the biggest moments in tennis history, right? In the last, I want to say 20 years.
Yeah.
And it feels like a landmark moment with, the big three and the big four for a little while, reigning for so many years. This is actually the first time in 20 years that somebody outside that group has won Wimbledon. So big moment for Alcaraz there and for the entire tennis world. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We're also going to talk about the women's final, and which we had basically, I would say, an upset of Ons Jabeur in that final,
Yeah.
and Marketa Vondrousova's first Grand Slam title in general, first Wimbledon as well, in her second attempt to win a Grand Slam title after making the final in the French Open a few years back. So great performance from her. So we're going to talk about how she got there and also talk, unfortunately, of how it ended for Jabeur after having such a terrific tournament. Um, so we're going to discuss that. We're going to also discuss some of the action from the semifinal stage, given that we recorded our previous episode up to previewing those semifinals. So we'll talk about what those matchups look like, and what do we think about some of the semifinalists also that had such a great tournament to get there. Apart from that, we'll jump into some big stories as well of Wimbledon. What are we going to remember from this fortnight? And um, apart from that, we're also going to jump into some power rankings, both into who are the best players of the year so far in our opinions, and who do we see as the bigger challengers moving forward into the hard court season. So a lot to talk about
Yeah.
in this show, and we'll end the podcast also discussing what's going on since Wimbledon and what's going to be happening until our next podcast. With that, let's jump into the big discussion.
Let's do
Jish,
it.
tell me about your feelings of seeing Carlos Alcaraz defeating Novak Djokovic in this Wimbledon final.
Yeah. I mean, the last time we anticipated this, rematch, I guess, of Alcaraz and Djokovic was just not too long ago at the French Open, and it was a great start to the match. However, Alcaraz had some nerves and had injury, I guess, cramping and physical issues at the in that match. Um, so it was kind of unclear going into the match to see, is he going to be able to handle his nerves a little better, and is he going to last physically against Djokovic? This is a Grand Slam final, instead of a semifinal, and I'm very impressed on how Alcaraz was able to adapt to the grass so quickly. Um, he hasn't played this tournament that many times, and playing against a veteran like Djokovic, who was looking forward to his third in a row Grand Slam final or Grand Slam victory, hopefully, and he stopped him in his tracks.
Yeah.
That was it was a big moment. So I think the match itself was just super entertaining. It had ups and downs. I think it was just a lot of momentum shifts, which is always interesting to see in a final. Um, but I enjoyed it. I was actually in New York with some friends watching it, and it was quite exciting. What were your thoughts? Initial thoughts?
Yeah. I actually, unfortunately, did not plan this well, and I actually was driving during the final. I did not realize that the Wimbledon, entire event was happening at the same time as I had, something planned over here already. So I had to catch it afterwards, but I was following along the way, as we were driving out to New Jersey. So, or sorry, to Rhode Island. So I did see some of the sort of momentum swings that you're talking about, and I actually caught a lot of that first set, live as it was happening. And
Nice.
honestly, I felt a lot of people that I've seen sort of talking about this match, sort
Mm.
of the narrative has been like, oh, Alcaraz came in like, not playing great and super nervous again. And honestly, I didn't see that. I felt
Yeah.
like he played well. It was just that he was a little bit too over anxious going for shots at the wrong time. So
Mm.
a little bit kind of like what he used to do a lot last year. That used to be something that we criticized a lot, from Alcaraz, that he can, something that he could work on, right? So a lot of that was happening in the first set, but he had early break chances in the beginning of the match. So he put a lot of pressure to start, to Djokovic, and Djokovic actually had to battle through some of those service games to start with in that first set. So when I saw that, I felt like, okay, he's losing and not winning the big points, but at
Mm-hmm.
least it seems like he's not going to be, cramping like it happened in Roland Garros.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I saw the Roland Garros match in the first set, Alcaraz just looked completely bamboozled what he was, what he was facing against Djokovic in that first set in Roland Garros. In this match, it felt a little bit like they were kind of on equal terms, but Djokovic was winning all of the big points. And that's why he won so lopsided. But then in the second set, things changed, right? And Alcaraz actually, he said in his press conference that he thought he was playing well, and he was able to sort of, rein in a little bit, his game to be a little bit more consistent in the second set. And I thought that was a huge
Yeah.
factor in this match, because he literally learned within the match, right? And it's so hard to do
Yeah.
that.
That seems it seems so I mean, it's not trivial at all. It seems very hard, and he makes it look trivial.
Yeah,
Um, he's doing this in in Grand Slams. He's able to adapt. It's amazing. Yeah.
it's amazing. And I felt like he did the thing that typically takes a few years to do, right? You
Right.
learn from your mistakes. Next year you come back and you change your strategy. Alcaraz is just doing it within the match. Like he
Yeah.
was coming too anxious. He was doing the Alcaraz things that we've always known that he does. He's trying to like hit himself out of trouble, and was getting him into trouble, right, in that first set. And he collected himself and was able to play a more percentage based tennis without losing the spectacular power that he has, and all of the things that make Alcaraz so special, right? So seeing that in the way that he was able to sort of adjust in the second set was incredible. And I thought that it was important for him to make this a really close set, right? Just hang in there as much as he can and really try to put some pressure on Djokovic, because this is the thing that happens with Djokovic, is that he's not even necessarily playing all that well, but he's still beating you because of his aura, and because of how he plays under pressure, and because he knows that you are going to crumble, right? In the big moments. And I felt like he needed to be put in that position as well. And that is something that nobody has been able to do. But Alcaraz had the game to really trouble him.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as he could stay mentally there,
Yeah.
it would be something that for the first time Djokovic was going to be under pressure, right? And
Yeah.
we saw that in the tiebreak, right?
Yeah. That's it. Before this tiebreak, Djokovic had a ridiculous streak, right?
Yeah.
Um, it was quite impressive to see that being broken. And actually,
Yeah,
after the
before
second,
this he had won
yeah,
15 tie breaks in a row
yeah,
in Grand Slam matches,
that's yeah ridiculous.
which is ridiculous.
Um, and yeah, when he won that second set, I really thought that okay, this is gonna be a little tricky for Djokovic. Before that, I was thinking, Djokovic is just gonna get stronger and stronger as the match progresses, as he normally does, and it's gonna be very hard to beat him. But the fact that Alcaraz was able to bag that second set, I think it was a pretty key set for Alcaraz right
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think, you know, one of the things that really drove me crazy when I was watching Djokovic play Hurkacz in the
Mm,
in the round of 16,
right.
um,
So,
is that both times in the first two sets, right,
right.
in the first two tie breaks, both times Djokovic made mistakes that Hurkacz could have, you know, really exploited to win both of those sets, right?
Right.
But Djokovic, even though he made those mistakes, like one of them was a big double fault in the first set where Hurkacz was not being touched on serve, so that felt like a big moment.
Yeah.
Um, but then Hurkacz just could not when he got close to closing out that set, he just tightened up and Djokovic just does this in the tie breaks, right? He he just puts enough pressure on you knowing that you are going to have to put this away and you crumble, right? His opponents just crumble under the pressure. This time, it was Djokovic that actually felt that pressure. He had, set point to win this tiebreak, a 6-5, and he missed a
Mm,
pretty easy backhand. It was a little tricky, the first one, because it was a little bit kind of like close to the baseline. Still a routine one, but he should have at least put it in play. He wasn't really in a winning position, so we don't know if he would have won the point, but he gave away that point with that error, right? Just something that you don't see him doing. Then the very next point, he had a pretty good backhand, and he just netted it, right? So with that, he crumbled under the pressure, and Alcaraz did not try to overplay it, right? He actually let Djokovic succumb under pressure, which is not something that you would expect from Alcaraz.
right.
You would expect that from Djokovic. So that to me was one of the biggest moments of the match. And then Alcaraz just won the set point with the same shot that he beat Rune on a set point in the quarterfinal. That Djokovic trying to serve on volley, and he just passed
Yeah.
him
That
down the
was
line. It
great.
was a fantastic shot.
Yeah.
And it just felt like that was a jolt for Alcaraz of belief, right?
Mm,
Like he was so close, so close, so close. But if he loses that set, he probably doesn't win the match. Honestly, he probably loses in straight sets. He probably just crumbles under the pressure. And he even said it like, I probably would not win in the post match press conference. Um, so yeah, that was something that I found like a really big moment in this match. And then in the third set, man, that set was especially that one game, right? You remember that one game that was like
that
26
was
minutes. So
was
ridiculous.
seemed like the longest game. Yeah.
I felt like it's been the longest game. I think it broke some
It
sort of
might have,
record.
yeah, broke some records. That was, it's like
It was
11, 12
incredible.
deuces or something, even longer than
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
even more, I
I
think. I
think
think
so.
maybe it got into
Yeah.
14. But the point is that I felt like that game, it was kind of a microcosm of just the set and the match itself
Mm,
because it was Djokovic like he he kept getting put on the pressure, but coming up with big shots and getting himself in position to win the game. And Alcaraz kept getting over the disappointment, getting it back to deuce, getting another break point, then losing it, and then
mm,
coming back and it was like a tug of war in that sense. for the both of them, and it was just unbelievable to see how Alcaraz just was able to stay within himself until he finally was able to get the break there. And then eventually it turned into a 6-1 set, right? But it was more lopsided, really. So the score was more lopsided than really the actual set was, a little bit similar to the first. Because Djokovic did have his good moments in that set, but Alcaraz was able to win all the big points in this set. And he got himself into a good position to go up 2-1, right? To have one of two shots of
Yeah.
winning the title, right? He had two sets. He only had to win one of them. And honestly, credit to Djokovic for coming back in that fourth set
Yeah.
and really taking the momentum back. And at that point, going into the fifth, you would think you got to favor
Djokovic.
Djokovic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think this was a pretty physical match for Djokovic.
Yeah,
He looked gassed at some points, especially in that fifth set too. Fourth and fifth, I'd say too. Um, yeah, I was surprised how calm Alcaraz was in that fifth set
yeah,
and was able to close it off because it takes a lot to close out Djokovic, as we all know. he's he's come back. I always say is like the game's not over yet, even though Alcaraz is up match point. The match isn't over yet.
yeah.
Um, and
We've seen that way too many
we've seen
times.
it too many times from
Yeah,
Djokovic. His extraordinary ability to just come back. But you got to hand it to Alcaraz. He played, yeah, well, I think one of the best tactical matches you could ever see anyone play. He really adjusts so well on the fly. It's
yeah.
nothing I've seen
It's
in
very big three like. We've seen
yes,
Federer,
yes,
Nadal, and
yeah.
Djokovic do this all the time, right?
Yeah, it's so much
It's
fun, that these players are able to push themselves to their peaks, right? And then this is like the best that comes out of each and one of them. So, um, yeah, it's great that we have another edition. I would say like Alcaraz is definitely in there in the mix.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's been talked about in this vein for so many well,
yeah,
for so long, right? For more than a year. I mean, our first episode of the Point by Point Tennis podcast was literally called a Superstar is Born, right? And it was referencing to a Carlos Alcaraz um, playing in Madrid last year, before he was still, in the top of the game, but he was an up and coming player, and he beat Nadal, Djokovic, back to back on clay. Nobody had ever done that. Not even Federer, who's a
yep,
member of the Big Three. Nobody had done that. And Alcaraz did that, with just 19 years old. And then he won the title in convincing fashion over Alexander Zverev, in that final, who was the two-time defending champion in Madrid.
mm,
So not only he beat two of the big three, he beat one of the younger guys that was really established at that tournament. So it was just a fantastic display of tennis from such a young player, and that was the hello moment for him, right? Um, and now a year later, right, after seeing what happened to him at Roland Garros, we all know what happened, right? He lost that first set. He got completely dominated, and honestly, he got taken to school by Djokovic in terms of big stage tennis, right?
yeah,
In terms of what to do in big stages. And Alcaraz responded in that second set, and he was really playing up to his limits, but the pressure got to him, right, in the beginning of the third, and his body shut down. He just cramped all over and couldn't deal with the situation. And look at what he did just one Grand Slam later, just
just a
two
few
tournaments
weeks
later,
later, right?
just
Yeah,
a few weeks later,
yeah,
not even a month, right? And look what he did. Like he was able to overcome all that on his worst surface,
yeah,
which dare I say is might be his best surface moving forward with the way he played, right? And it was completely unexpected because Djokovic was the king of Wimbledon for a
yeah.
long time. I mean, he hadn't lost.
On center court,
in
I
on
think.
center
Yeah.
court for
Yeah.
like how many years? It's
10 years,
2011
I
or
think I
something like
heard.
that, or it was I lost count at this point. And
Yeah.
he was the four-time defending champion, right? He was trying to tie Federer's record at Wimbledon, which is now safe for one more year.
Yes.
um, so Alcaraz did
Yeah.
a good one there for Federer. Um,
Yeah.
it's just incredible, and just
Yeah.
incredible to see what Alcaraz did, and it really does feel like one of those moments where
He's
you
entered
feel
it.
like you're watching
Yeah.
history, right?
Yeah.
You're
This
just
is
right in front of your eyes.
definitely.
Uh, and I think he's the real deal. This is not a fluke what he did.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
I
this
think we are.
match really proved so much for Alcaraz.
Yeah,
In terms of his ability to play under pressure, um, play against the big three. He's officially now played someone in the final of a Grand Slam, um, and was able to triumph against them. Right. So, yeah, big, you know, big respect to him and his team because they tactically, yeah, really figured it out. Which I mean, you can even argue that Federer in his last stages, he had it figured out, but it was so hard for him even to get another Grand Slam at Wimbledon,
yeah,
facing Djokovic so many times. So, yeah, it was amazing. I'll give a
it was
quick
amazing.
I'll give a quick plug to my niece Mackenzie. She's watching right now.
Hi, Mackenzie.
Hey, Mackenzie.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think in terms of this tennis match, right? We talked about that second set, how it was a big moment in the match. I think there was one more big moment in this match, in that final set, where Alcaraz was down break point early in that fifth set, right? And Djokovic hit. It was one of those high balls that I think the wind kind of played with it a little bit, and he was
Mm.
unsure if he should have hit an overhead. He instead opted to go for a drive volley, which a lot of people were criticizing. And honestly, like, I get it. And it's funny because this is the one time, there is, if you look at Reddit and Twitter, there is like the Joko smash is a thing, right? It's he's always known for, like, every now and then just throwing these really bad smashes into the net, or hitting them out, right? And I remember a few times that really cost him.
This
Um,
was a
the
pretty violent one. Yeah.
There was a pretty vital one, right? And it wasn't even overhead because he didn't choose it. He went instead for the drive volley, probably thinking of that, right? That he doesn't trust his overhead that much. And I remember one time he did that against Rafa in the Olympics, and he just completely just missed it, like
Yeah.
by like 3 feet, a point that he should have put away at match point. So that's the only time that I remember seeing him do this in a big point, and this was kind of like that. It was a huge moment in the match because if he takes a break early in the fifth set, I just feel
Yeah.
like it would be difficult for Alcaraz from there, like, to overcome that. Maybe he could have, but we'll never know, right? But Djokovic would have been in a great position at that point, up a break in the final set, as center court where he hasn't lost in so many years. Um, that was a big moment, and then I think Alcaraz right after that broke him and took the
That
lead.
was big.
And man, I was so impressed by how Alcaraz served to just serve out that match. The way that he
Yeah.
was able to just completely, be calm in his serve and big serves, play his game, play his serve and volley. You know, when he served for the match at 5-4, it's a big
Mm.
moment, right? Because that's the moment where Djokovic comes
Comes
for
way
you,
up.
right?
Yeah.
He really puts the pressure on you, and he tried in
But he
that game,
served so well. Yeah.
and he served so well. Like, and especially the way that he went for that drop shot at the first point of the game, and missed it in the net, and then in the next point he goes straight back to the drop shot and hits a beautiful drop shot lob combination to win that point. It just tells me this kid has too much courage. I mean, it's just unreal for somebody who's just 20 years old. Um,
Mm.
and and then after the point right after, he went for the serve volley, and Djokovic hit the classic two-hander passing shot, and Alcaraz lunged and hit just a perfect
Perfect.
drop volley there. And it was just such a big moment because that's the moment where he comes for you, and he just breaks you, right? And Alcaraz he was able to weather the storm. And I thought that was just incredible to see Alcaraz do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't. He's. I mean, everyone has nerves, and Alcaraz even has nerves going into these matches. But the fact that he was, still able to just execute.
Yeah,
Like you mentioned that drop volley from. I mean, he hit yeah, that it's not an easy volley to hit.
completely on the
And
stretch too.
it was on the stretch, and he was able to control it and take off the pace. But I mean, he was also having fun out there. Like there were
Yeah,
times where we just see him laughing and enjoying himself, soaking in the crowd. And that's just that's the place you want to be, especially if you want to play someone like the big three at the center
yeah,
stage. And it was great. It was just so much fun to watch. It's just high quality tennis too. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the belief that he had was unreal.
Yeah. The belief was just,
And I gotta say, how
it was
important
there.
was how important was that warm-up tournament that he played in
Oh,
Queens?
wow. Yeah. He won it, right?
He won it, and he
He,
almost lost in the first day.
wait,
I
who
mean,
did he
that's
play
how
on the first day?
he played Rinderknecht,
Oh, that's
and he
right.
lost the first
Yes,
set.
yes, yes.
And in the final set, it went to a tiebreak. He had to really eke that one out. And he didn't look like he could move on the grass. Like he looked
He
uncomfortable.
looked a little all
We
over
saw
the
last year
place.
how he looked,
Yeah.
right? Last year he got pretty dismantled by Sinner in the round of 16. And the way that he used that tournament to really get comfortable on the
Mm.
grass and just learn from that, that was huge.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think it's really important. And I think for like we're gonna talk about Iga as well on the women's side. I think that was huge for her too. Like she had much better tournament. She didn't win it, right? But she really progressed in this tournament
Yeah.
from
She
last
played
year.
her way into that one. Yeah.
And she also played that tournament last year. Both of them did not play any warm-up events, and they looked like they didn't when they played Wimbledon, right? Um, so huge decision there to really go and have that preparation to come into Wimbledon and be ready for it. Um, but yeah, before we move on to sort of talking about maybe the semifinals as well, a little bit, I want to sort of list out a few stats from this match that are really important. So we talked about the tiebreak record, right? Djokovic had won 15 consecutive tiebreaks, the Grand Slam stage, and finally Alcaraz was able to break that streak in a very important moment, right? He loses that tiebreak, he goes down to 0, he probably doesn't win the match. So huge for not only the scoreboard but also the belief for Alcaraz to be able to win, to break something that was so unbreakable in Djokovic. It just gives him that belief. Um, Djokovic had 104 consecutive wins after winning the first set on the Grand Slam stage. 104.
That's,
And he was 78-0 at Wimbledon
oh
if we
my
don't count
gosh.
the one time that he won the first set against Nadal, but then had to retire in the second after the second set because he was injured or something. So discounting that one, that wasn't a complete match. He was 78-0 at Wimbledon after winning the first set. Alcaraz
These are
broke that.
ridiculous stats.
Ridiculous,
Yeah.
ridiculous. Here's another one that I was like, wow. So it took 18 pro matches ever for Alcaraz on the grass to win his first Wimbledon. You want to hear how many matches took the big
Yeah.
three to do this?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I saw this. Or not, no, I didn't see this particular stat, but he's one of the fastest rising tennis
Yeah.
players ever. Yeah.
So Rafa took 31 matches to win his first Wimbledon
Okay.
on grass. 31 versus 18. Roger took him 39 matches to win his first Wimbledon.
Not bad, Roger.
And Djokovic, 49 matches to
Wow.
win his first Wimbledon. Alcaraz, 18 matches. That
Yeah.
he went from not even being able to move well on the grass to Wimbledon champion, and it only took 18 matches. That's ridiculous. Um, we've already said 20 years since the Big Four have not won Wimbledon. He's the first one to do it, right, for 20 years. Um, in terms of the rating for this final, second highest rating in a Wimbledon final since 2012. And it felt that way. I had friends left and right that don't watch any tennis
Are you talking
were
about
asking
like
me
TV ratings? What
TV
kind of
ratings
yeah.
in BBC. Yes,
Okay.
in BBC. Um, and I had all my friends that didn't even watch tennis were just texting me, "Have you
Yeah.
seen this? Are you seeing this match? Who's this Alcaraz kid?" Like left and right, they were like tuning in.
That's
So it
true.
was a huge moment, not only for tennis fans, but just I think it broke, the tennis bubble essentially. It
Mm.
went to the mainstream.
Yeah.
Um, and just to list out some of Alcaraz's stats this year now after winning this, he's now 47-4 on the season. That's a 92.2% win percentage, right?
Wow.
That would be good for top 10 ever if he continues this pace. So that is a historic season right there. Um, and that includes a 4-1 record against the top five and a 8-1 record against the top 10. So he's not playing nobodies. He's playing the best players in the world and beating them a lot, very often. That one loss, it is Djokovic at Roland Garros. So it took basically a goat to
To
beat Alcaraz this
knock
year.
him down. Yeah.
So that is pretty crazy. Um, Obviously, he finished 12-0 on the grass for the season with two titles. And I just gotta say, his Wimbledon run was crazy. Like the players that he had to beat along the route to even get to this final.
Hmm.
He had to play Nicolas Jarry, who like most people won't know who he is, but he is very difficult to play against on a fast surface because he hits
Oh,
bombs of serves
yeah.
and bombs of forehands all over the place. So he was a very big test, and he actually took a set from Alcaraz, and I was up a break in the fourth set. Could have been five sets in that match, and Alcaraz did well to win in four. How about his match with Berrettini?
Yeah.
Berrettini was
And he was
playing
on. He
fantastic.
was. He dismantled him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had Berrettini had actually just destroyed Zverev in the previous round
Yep.
and looked like his Wimbledon finalist self again, to the point where I felt like he might actually beat
Show ball.
Alcaraz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a
Um,
big
he
game.
beat him.
Good serve.
Beat him. He lost the first set, Alcaraz,
Hmm.
to Berrettini, but came back and won three convincing sets in a row. Then he played Holger Rune, who was one of the most exciting young players along with Alcaraz.
Hmm.
He actually had beat him in Paris last year, the only time they've met. And
That was a
he beat
very
him pretty
anticipated match. Yeah.
very anticipated, and he did very well to win that pretty comfortably. Then in the semifinal, Medvedev, number three player in the world, and he's definitely been one of the best players this year, completely dismantled him. Like it was a beatdown essentially. So
Yeah.
that route to the final for Alcaraz was just so impressive to me. And just the final stat before we move on. He's entered 10 tournaments this year. He's won six of them. So he's like 60% winning titles in tournaments that he enters. And of the four that he didn't win, he had two semifinal appearances, lost to Sinner in Miami, lost to Djokovic in Roland Garros. One final, lost to Nori. And then that one weird result in Rome against Fabian Marozsan, right? Who we might consider the best player in the world now after beating
After beating
Alcaraz.
Alcaraz.
So that was the only weird one there. But overall, he's basically been reaching semifinals or better in every tournament that he's played this year. That sounds like a number one player in the world to me. And that's what he is right now. So what an incredible story from Alcaraz, incredible tournament.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Do we want to move on to semifinal talks? I do want to talk a little bit about Sinner and Medvedev
Let's do it.
before we go into the women's. Let's start with Djokovic and Sinner. This was a match that I thought was more likely to be possible, right, for the underdog to win, just because of the tennis that Sinner
Yeah.
has. and the way he actually battled with Djokovic last year to make it to 5-set defeat. So it was close. I honestly gotta say I'm a little bit deflated with Sinner
Yeah.
after seeing that match. I'm super high on him. You are super high on him.
Yeah.
Uh, and to me, I think mentally he needs to get a little bit better, especially in
I
these big
agree.
matches against big opponents. But yeah, what did you think about that match?
I didn't get to catch all of it, but yeah, from what I saw, um, it's that belief factor. I didn't see it in him like we see in Alcaraz against
Yeah,
Djokovic, and even last time they played last year in Wimbledon, that belief factor just after I guess the first he was up 2 sets and Djokovic started coming back, and then when that happens, it seemed like he completely lost it. It was like no chance
yeah.
for him to come back. Um, I I felt a little bit of that in during this match, but yeah, I am a bit disappointed that he couldn't have a better fight against Djokovic.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because he does have the tennis. And
He
the
does.
thing that I do like about Sinner, though, I gotta say that overall, I am optimistic about his ceiling moving forward. Maybe more so than Medvedev, who I like better right now than Sinner. Right, I think he's a better player right now than Sinner. Um, but I like Sinner's ceiling better than Medvedev, and the reason is because I think Sinner has a lot of power in his game, and it's easy power. He doesn't really have to. It doesn't feel forced, right? Like he's honestly, he's a lot of the times averaging like 80 miles an hour on his forehand and backhands, and it doesn't feel like
Big.
he's even exerting that much. Like it doesn't look like the windup that Alcaraz takes, right? For his shots, his power comes easy. Is a little bit like Rybakina on the women's side, whereas Alcaraz is a little bit more like Sabalenka, right? That you can see the effort that they're putting into their shots. Sinner is just easy power, and I feel like that is really good for consistency. But variety is something that he needs, and to his credit, he is trying to implement that in his game. It's not working yet. Like he's gonna take a little time to learn all that. But I like that he's working on adding more of the variety to go along with the power that he has,
Mhm.
which is so effective for Alcaraz, right? We've seen how like he just completely dismantled his opponents with the combination of the huge forehand and the drop shot, right? So adding a little bit more of that for Sinner, I think that's going to be really good for him.
Yeah, I think it's also one thing that differentiates between Sinner and Alcaraz is just the fact of being able to change things on the fly. I mean, Alcaraz is
Yeah,
just so good at that. I think Sinner actually has a very, I would say, a pretty complete game too. But you know, Alcaraz is just executing so much better. I feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That switch is something that's very hard, and
Yeah.
Sinner still needs to definitely get better at that for sure.
Yeah. It's more reps, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, I feel encouraged by Sinner, and this is his first semifinal, right? In a Grand Slam, he broke that quarterfinal barrier. He had been reaching. I think he's reached all of the quarterfinals now of the majors, but this is the first time that he was able to get that next step, and that's on in the end with a guy who's 21 years old, right? Or that's you can't ask for anything else, right? He's progressing, and he's not stagnating. So I'm still not worried for him because even though that I have such high expectations for him, I felt like at this point of the year he should have already won a big event, right? Like maybe a Masters or something like that, or maybe reach a Grand Slam final, just because of the tennis that he has. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm so like desperate to see him do it because I know he has it in him. Um, the fact is that his year has been his best year, and every year has been better than the previous so
Mm-hmm.
far. So you can't really knock him too much in that sense. I think we're a little bit more like, we just know where he can get, right? And
Yeah.
we've seen Alcaraz go there so fast. Um,
Yeah.
and to a lesser extent, we've seen Rune do the same, right? In terms of, you know, being able to win big matches. Like Rune is still not. I would say that Sinner is a slightly better player than Rune today,
Hmm.
at this point. But Rune to me feels like somebody that I trust more in bigger moments, right? And he's already like he's reached three Masters finals. He's won one of them, and he beat Djokovic in one of them to do it, right? So it's
Yeah.
actually he's beat him twice in Masters. Rune, he's beat Djokovic twice. So that's the kind of thing where I kind of want to see more from Sinner. I want to see him. It's okay if he doesn't win the big tournament as long as you are able to beat some of these players sometimes, right? And that's the thing that I want to see with him. But I think he's getting there. I
Yeah.
think he has a bright future.
I think so too. Um, yeah.
And yeah, on the other hand, I when I look at the matchup between Alcaraz and Medvedev, man, that really looks like a bad matchup. Like I don't see what
Because
Medvedev can do to change
well,
this.
I yeah. First of all, I think he needs to change to where he returns serve,
Yes.
especially against someone like Alcaraz or even
Yeah.
Djokovic. Yeah, it looked like Alcaraz was in control.
Alcaraz has just too much
Yeah,
variety to
yeah,
exploit that.
yeah.
He and it comes natural to him. With
Mm-hmm.
Djokovic, it's not too bad, just because Djokovic, it's not natural to Djokovic to like finish points at net and do
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. He wants to be exchanging at the baseline, right?
Right, right.
He's kind of a Medvedev in a way, a better Medvedev. So somehow that matchup works well for Medvedev, right? They're just trying to do the same thing. Who can do it better, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Alcaraz, like Alcaraz is just like if you look at Medvedev and Djokovic, even though they play similarly, the way that Djokovic was returning serve against with Alcaraz is very different from what Medvedev was trying to do against Alcaraz, right? Djokovic is on the baseline, very close to the
Mm-hmm.
baseline, returning serve, because he knows Alcaraz is going to destroy you with that drop shot if you stay way too back. Um, and actually, for a while, Djokovic took that drop shot away from Alcaraz for like three sets. It took Alcaraz a little bit of work to be able to incorporate it and to execute it, particularly in the final set. Um, and even then, like he was getting almost beat with passing shots, and he had to come up with amazing volleys, to overcome it. So that's different from what Medvedev is doing, and he needs to change something because this is twice in a row where we've seen him just completely get dismantled. And honestly, Medvedev just I gotta say, he played a dumb match against Alcaraz. Like, everybody can see that this was gonna be a problem, and he just didn't adjust to it.
He didn't
And
adjust.
it was poor, just poor game plan. So I don't know what he's gonna do. Hopefully, maybe faster hard courts where he moves a little better. Maybe that can give him a little bit of an edge. But I think I've seen enough to say that this is gonna be a one-sided matchup if Medvedev doesn't do something.
Yeah,
Um, So, and it was just
I think
incredible
it's
to see how Alcaraz could execute. Like he knew that this
yeah,
was the thing that he needed to do, right? Just
yeah,
make
and
sure to hit
mm,
serving volleys and to incorporate that drop shot, and he just did it repeatedly.
yeah. As the tournament progressed, Alcaraz just became more and more comfortable going for his shots, and then that match especially, it seemed like he was just on. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a fun final.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I when I saw that match, I really had more belief, right?
yeah.
And the possibilities of Alcaraz just because of how dominant he looked on
Mm-hmm.
grass. Like he looked like he learned how to move on it.
Mm-hmm.
He incorporated all the things that we already knew, right? We've talked about it in previous episodes that if he could figure out his movement on the grass, he had the game to do it, right? He
Right.
had the game to be really effective on grass. And I kind of like the grass for Alcaraz even better than clay. I honestly still think to this day that clay is the worst surface for Alcaraz. And the only reason that I say that is because, like, the reason it's funny, right, for listeners that maybe not know, obviously all of the bigger results on Alcaraz has been on clay prior to him becoming the player that he is now, right? So when he was coming up, he
So
pretty
he
much
would
won
come
everything
up.
on clay,
Yeah.
right? He didn't win anything on grass, he didn't win anything on hard courts, and it was all clay. Um, but as he's become into this player, he wants to play so offensive. He reminds me so much of Federer, honestly, with
Yeah.
the creativity and the offense, right?
Hmm.
Um, and Federer always had the most trouble on clay, even though he was great on it, because he just had more reps. He had more opportunities
Hmm.
to hit himself into trouble, right? Because he's always trying to be aggressive. That's his game. And Alcaraz wants to play that way too. And I feel like on clay, he gets more opportunities to go back to that mentality of, I'm just gonna end this point from whatever position I'm at, even if I'm in a very bad position. And I feel like on the grass, he doesn't get that opportunity. He just has to play whatever he's given.
Hmm.
And it almost simplifies things for him a bit, you know?
Just
And I
goes
think,
for it.
yeah, and I think that serve and volley game
Hmm.
and just the creativity that he has, I think it's so perfect for the grass. So who knows, man? I mean, he's already won his two Grand Slams outside of the clay. So far, it looks like that's the best for him. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, Medvedev really does need to do something to change this up because, I mean, Medvedev is the third best player in the world, but he's not going to beat Alcaraz ever if he continues to play this way. He's going to have to
Mm.
beg that somebody takes him out or that he's on Djokovic's side of the bracket where he has a little bit more chance with his style, right? And it's just not a recipe for success for him. So yeah, I don't know. Do you feel as equally pessimistic as I do with Medvedev against Alcaraz?
Yeah, he's gonna have to change. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't see him unless it's like you said, maybe a fast hard court where he moves better. Because Medvedev is lightning fast. Also, I mean,
Yeah.
even on this grass surface, he's really fast, which is impressive. But compared to Alcaraz, Alcaraz is just, you know, he is one of those players that are just, oh, he's off the charts with everything. So he's going to be a tough one to beat um, in these sort of surfaces. Yeah, it's a problem. I think it is a problem for Medvedev, and he may have a better shot at playing like someone like Djokovic, right? Um, into getting into some of these later stages of the tournament. But I think even if he ends up playing someone like, um, I mean, I think Sinner could even give him some run for his money if he is on. So Sinner and Alcaraz might be
Yeah.
problems for him.
I think Sinner's gonna have to figure out that matchup though. I don't know why like
Yeah, he has
Sinner
issues with it,
cannot beat
right?
him.
Yeah, but he
It's
should
like
be
0
able
and
to.
6.
He
You
should
would
be
think
able
with
to.
his game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay, I know what it is. It's the lack of variety. That's what hurts him. Because what Alcaraz hurts Medvedev with is the fact that he can just drop shot him or serve and volley him
Hmm.
very easily. So he takes away that benefit of the court position to put the ball in play. He has to come up with something special to pass Alcaraz to be able to win a point. And that's where Sinner still, he needs to incorporate that into his game. But once he does, I
Do you
see him
think?
never beating Sinner.
Do you think Sinner should bring on a different coach or an additional
No, I
coach?
don't think so.
You
I
don't think
think I
so?
think well, he's working on those things. I think
Hmm.
it's just that he hasn't learned it yet that well. I've seen him try it. It just doesn't come
Yeah.
natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, and especially in the off season where you can really focus on like something to you got
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
time to really not worry about traveling to this tournament and here and there. I think he can really work on it, and I think he has the capability to do it.
Mm.
Once he does that, it's gonna be trouble for Medvedev too, because the power part of the game he has that Sinner, and we saw him play Medvedev tough earlier this year. There was the tournament in can't remember where it was now, but it was one of those three tournaments that Medvedev won like back to back to back. Remember that he won three in a row
Yeah. Yeah.
before the Sunshine Double. He played Sinner in one of those finals, and Sinner actually won the first set. And he was playing fantastic. Like he was just out hitting Medvedev,
He's
and
got
he
to
just couldn't
string
keep it
it.
up.
Yeah.
But
He's got
I,
to keep
I
it.
think he's getting there. I think he's getting there, and once he figures out how to exploit Medvedev's court positioning the same way Alcaraz does, it's going to be tough for Medvedev to overcome it. It's a matter of see if Sinner can incorporate that. But yeah, well, it's interesting moving forward to see how Medvedev can adjust. Okay,
Right,
anything
well,
else you want to talk about before we move on to the women's?
yeah, I'll just add one small thing. I mean, I actually forwarded this to you, Carlos, earlier today. It was just it was Juan Carlos Ferrero's little take
Yeah.
on adapting, Alcaraz's game to the grass, and I guess this was some interview he did, but he said we copied a little of Murray, Roger, and Novak, and he tries to copy a little bit the same in the end. Says it wasn't easy, but we did it, and it's quite remarkable that they were able to do it so quickly.
It's
Get
crazy.
to the Wimbledon title. But it's interesting to see that they used tactics from these three big players, and Novak is one of them, and Novak's the one who ended up falling in the end to Alcaraz. But
Yeah. Oh, that actually
yeah,
reminds me of something I want to say before we move on as well. So Djokovic actually was interviewed the um, after the final, right? And he was asked a question on what does he think about Alcaraz as a player, what he's
hmm
like. Um, and he said that, people have been talking about his game consisting of certain elements of Roger, Rafa, and myself. Djokovic. This is
yeah,
Djokovic talking, not me, not Carlos. Djokovic talking.
Djokovic,
So Djokovic, Rafa, and Roger,
yeah,
right? And he said, I agree with that. He's basically got the best of all three worlds, and I haven't played a player like him. I
yeah.
mean, how big is that praise? That
It's
is,
it's pretty amazing, yeah.
that's
And
huge.
and the thing
Like,
is, I actually see it too. I don't know if you do
yeah,
too. It's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
obvious.
absolutely.
I mean, some of
It's pretty obvious.
the trademark shots from Federer, especially on the grass, you see it. He does this, you know, kind of like a fake drop slice, but he pushes it long. He does that a
Yeah,
lot. He'll also do
very
the
Federer. That's very
inside. He has
Federer.
very
Yes.
Federer, and then also he'll do a little like it's a drop shot, but it's more of like just a short slice inside out from his forehand on the backhand side to the
Hmm.
other corner. Um, it's just like that's also another classic grass Federer shot.
Yeah.
Um, but then he serves and volleys very aggressively. He'll hit those drop volleys, which are just insane touch, and yeah, it's quite impressive. I mean, his forehand is lethal, and just
Yeah.
like Federer and Nadal. Nadal also has that
It's kind of
huge
like a
inside
combination
out.
of both.
Yeah, yeah, he has that pretty big wind up like Nadal, but also does that. Um, he can go down the line like Federer does and come in, and he can also hit that crazy inside out like Nadal does.
Yeah.
uh, it's pretty impressive. Yeah, it's fun to
And
watch.
then
It's so much fun
from
to watch.
Djokovic, he definitely has that sliding backhand,
Oh gosh,
'cause especially
yeah.
especially the passing shots cross
Even
court and
and
down
the
the
fact
line.
that he was able to do that on grass too so quickly.
He could not slide on grass. He could not. Like
Yeah,
he was saying it.
yeah.
And how in the final he
And he
was
was
doing
able
it.
to. He was just sliding everywhere. Same thing with I was surprised by the Sinner match too. Like Sinner was sliding all over the place on grass,
Yeah.
and I was just very impressed that he was able to like not roll an ankle or anything.
Yeah. And I
Um,
gotta say, Sinner also has been a quick learner
a
on
quick
grass
learner on
because
grass,
he
yeah.
last year before he had that run, he had a
hmm
pretty poor record on grass
Yeah.
before entering Wimbledon, and he got all the way to the quarterfinal and pushed Djokovic harder than anybody else,
hmm
right, in that tournament. So, and then this year he made the semifinal. So he really improved a lot as well, learned a lot. But but yeah, I agree. I mean, the way that Alcaraz incorporates elements of all three of them, and that's actually what Djokovic was saying too. Like
Right.
Djokovic
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
saying like which of the elements, right, that he incorporated. He
Yeah.
was saying that the mentality of Rafa, the fighting spirit. And then he was saying from Djokovic, the backhand and the sort of big moment,
Right.
like big moment. Yeah, like
Spoiler.
I guess under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Party
So,
people. Yeah.
and then from Federer, he was saying the aggressiveness, like the aggressive
Yeah.
mentality that he had in the variety.
Absolutely.
Obviously Federer had that variety. He also has from Federer. I don't know. I think you mentioned that. Maybe I don't remember if you mentioned it, but he has the saber as well.
Oh
He does the
gosh.
saber.
He does that
Like
very
for
effectively.
listeners that don't know what that is, like that's
It's
essentially kind of
it's
like a return volley. It's
yeah.
in a way. It's kind of like a
Do you
chip
remember the
return.
acronym? The acronym?
Yeah, it's the sneak attack by
Sneak attack.
Roger.
Yep, by Roger.
Yep. So this is the
Yeah.
Sabeck, I guess. But
Save
sneak attack by Carlos. Or
Yeah.
Seba? Sneak attack by
By
Alcaraz? A
Alcaraz.
little
Oh,
better.
it sounds a little better. Seba. Yeah.
Saber's better though. But yeah, he does that as well, and it's just incredible how he can just take elements of every
Yeah.
best player in history and just add it to his game like nothing. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. He's such a quick learner, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how he evolves in the coming years and how the game evolves. Because I mean, if you see the three people that he's able to learn from and actually able to implement his learnings from and execute, uh, you know, in the coming years, he's gonna do something different. I'm kind of really excited to see what he's gonna bring to the table because these are
Yeah,
the big three. They disrupted this game.
yeah,
Federer had his own path and carved a way for Nadal and Djokovic, and Djokovic is obviously doing amazing things now. So I mean, Nadal also in his right with his crazy French Open titles. But let's see what Carlos Alcaraz does. I'm super excited because he's I think now, for me at least, he's up in that territory, or he has the
yes,
potential to be in that territory very soon.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm actually pretty also excited in addition to that to who is he going to inspire to challenge him?
Yeah,
Because I
exactly.
remember when Federer came up and became, the man,
Yeah,
for
he
a
dominated.
while.
Yeah.
He just dominated, and it took a while for somebody like
Hmm.
Nadal, right,
Yeah.
to really challenge him. And Nadal was really he was doing it on all surfaces in a way, but he wasn't doing it against everybody, right, on all surfaces. It was really on clay where he was establishing himself
Hmm.
as the second best player. And he did have a few wins on hard courts against Roger early on, but Alcaraz is doing this on every surface to start. And it's going to be interesting to see who he's going to inspire. Is it going to be Rune who's going to up his game? Is Sinner going to meet him there?
Hmm.
Or is it the 15-year-old that's playing juniors right now? Because remember, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Rafa is 5 years younger than Federer.
Right.
So who knows? The best challenger of Alcaraz's career might not even be on the tour right now. Because I
That
mean,
is
Alcaraz is just
true.
20. So it'll be interesting to see like if some of these youngsters they're gonna try to like emulate a lot of what Alcaraz does or even surpass or even try to do something different or whatever it is, right? And I'm just excited to see if somebody's gonna be able to live up to it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll add one more thing. I mean, what does Djokovic have to do now? You know, he might also need to change and evolve as a player. We've
Yeah.
seen Nadal, change up a little bit of what he has had to do with his serves and his playing style. I mean, he's adapted quite a bit. Uh, and Federer has definitely done a
Oh, I mean,
lot.
yeah.
He's evolved throughout generations of players, right? So he's changed his racket, he's changed his game plan. I mean, towards the end of his career, he was very efficient and at finishing off points. So it'll be interesting to see if Djokovic actually changes because I think he may have to if he wants to take out Alcaraz in some of these big matches. Maybe be
Yeah, it
more
is
aggressive, you know?
it's gonna be interesting to
Yeah.
see because he's now 1-2 against Alcaraz, right? He lost also in Madrid a year
Hmm.
ago. And he lost or he won the Roland Garros, but then he lost now, right? So it's hard to say like if he has to do something, but at the same time, like you're saying, like Alcaraz is just getting better. Like maybe
Yeah.
the next time they face each other, Alcaraz is gonna have even more belief, and he's gonna be even more spectacular, right? Let's be real. This final, like for all of the hype and all of the amazing stories, the quality of tennis at times, you know, Alcaraz has played better this year,
Yeah.
and also Djokovic. So who's to say if Alcaraz bring, let's say, the level that he brought in Indian Wells to the U.S. Open, and Djokovic cannot live with that, right? Because Alcaraz was just absurd in Indian Wells. His level was ridiculous. Let's say that he does that, then at that point, does Djokovic need to do something? And honestly, I don't put it past him. Like he's already done it. Like he changed well his diet to start with to
Yeah,
become
that's
the
true.
guy he is now, right? He
He's
changed
also made a lot of changes.
his conditioning and also the fact that recently he who's the guy that is in his team again? I forget his name.
Even
The
Isevich.
former player, Ivanisevic, right?
Yeah.
He brought him in to help him with his serve.
Mm-hmm.
And now Djokovic is one of the best servers in the world, and that used to be absolutely his weakness
Yeah.
before, right? Even when he was already a legend, right? He was already winning Grand Slams left and right. His serve was the one thing that you could exploit. He was just so physically dominant that he could lose serve and he was just going to break you right back, right? But now he doesn't have the same physical abilities because obviously he's older, but he is now a lot more efficient on serve. So I don't put it past him to do something even different to figure out how to beat Alcaraz as well.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that moving forward is going to be interesting as well, and maybe even at the Australian Open more so because U.S. Open is a little weird, where like for some reason Djokovic has not done well there historically, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of like first time champions that go into U.S. Open, but where I'm really interested to see is on the Australian Open. That's
Mm-hmm.
Novak's territory. And I want to see how Alcaraz is going to be able to, to try and do the same thing that he did in Wimbledon there,
Yeah.
right?
Too bad he
Um,
missed it this year.
Too bad he missed it, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's going to be interesting next year for sure.
definitely. All right. So does that wrap up our gentleman singles coverage?
Yeah. Let's move on to the women's.
Let's do it. All right. All right.
So in
Let's
the
go
women's
to the
final, we
ladies.
had Marketa Vondrousova winning the title. Um,
Oof.
Obviously the player that everybody thought was going to win,
Who
right?
had bets on her? Oh my gosh.
Whoever had bets on her is pretty rich right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, my
and she
bracket
beat,
was busted.
got busted. Look,
Completely.
I like Marketa Vondrousova, and I've seen her do some really good things. She went to the Roland Garros final a few years back, but nobody had this happening on grass. I mean, her grass career has been she's been really bad on grass before Wimbledon. Um, So this was a incredible turnaround, the way she was able to learn on the grass, and just a great performance overall in the tournament. And she actually took out two players that were kind of the story of the tournament, in Elina Svitolina in the semifinals, and
Yeah.
Ons Jabeur in the final. And those were two players that everybody was thinking, these are
These are,
huge stories.
yeah. And they had such a great run right before meeting Vondrousova. So,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
Ons Jabeur probably had the most impressive run I've seen in the women's game in a long time.
That was so much
Um,
fun to watch. My goodness.
yeah, she to me, honestly, and we've had a big high, talking about the men's final and how great the
Mm-hmm.
story of Alcaraz was, and I actually had to like, I feel a little bit sad on the women's side because I feel great for Marketa. She really deserves it. But to me, right, just being honest, I feel like Ons Jabeur is a much better player than her, and she should have won this match. I feel,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it was just a little bit. It was a little bit sad to
It
see
was
how the pressure
pretty
really,
emotional.
really got to her. Yeah,
Yeah, I have to echo the same thing. I mean, looking at the previous matches coming into the final, Jabeur was just on fire. I mean, playing
yeah,
some of the best tennis I've ever seen her play. She's playing so freely, and then you see her in the final. You're like, where did she go? Like, what can she
Just so tense.
just somehow get loose? Someone needed to shake her. I don't know, but just to
Yeah,
get her going, and it just never
just
came.
never
It
happened.
just never happened. I
Yeah,
mean, you kind of have to feel for her. I mean, I know she's trying. She has a mental coach too. I mean, we saw it last year. Her also reaching uh, to this stage and really letting the nerves get to her, and she has a final problem.
she
She
does,
does. Yeah.
particularly in Grand Slams.
Yeah.
This is her third Slam final, and it's the third time she's lost, right? I mean, to be fair, the first two, in hindsight, she probably should have lost them because Rybakina is
Yeah. Rabat,
amazing
well
on fast
deserved.
surfaces,
Yes.
and she's established herself as one of the best three players in the world by far this year, right?
Correct. Correct.
So in hindsight, I can see how Jabeur loses that match.
But
Then
this one,
U.S. Open,
oh, yeah.
she loses to Iga, and Iga's the best player in the world, so that's not a bad loss. And she actually played pretty well. She almost pushed it into the third set in that second set
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
as well. So she could be happy with her performance in those two finals. But this one,
This is
she
gonna
had to
hurt.
win this. I mean,
Yeah.
this is going to hurt for her. Um, and we all know from either if you watch a lot of tennis like we do, or if you watch the Breaking Point show on Netflix, everybody that's done that knows that she had the trophy as her screensaver on her
Yeah.
phone, the Wimbledon
Yes.
trophy.
Yes.
And so
As even
she
in the
was
press
going,
conferences, right? She would talk about it.
yes,
Yeah.
she was going for this title, and she put it there as a mission from the very start of last year to get this done, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is the one that she was targeting. And honestly, she has the game for this. I mean, we talked about how Alcaraz has the beautiful game for grass
Yeah.
because he has so much variety. Well, that's Ons Jabeur. Ons
Oh.
Jabeur has tons of variety. She probably has as much variety as Alcaraz on the women's side, right? Maybe not the same power that Alcaraz has, but she does have all of that variety. I mean, she's hitting drop shots off of first serves.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
She looked like she was toying people out there at some
Yeah,
points. I mean, it reminds me of how Federer used to play on the grass.
yeah, it literally,
Like,
like,
so relaxed before the final, obviously. She was
mhm,
super relaxed and just playing so freely and enjoying herself out there. She was hitting like winners on her approach shots, just like laser sharp pinpoint accuracy. It looked like
yeah,
everything was going for her up until the
yeah,
final.
and her run to the final was
Yeah,
incredible. I mean,
yeah,
she beat four
yeah.
Grand Slam
Let's
champions
go
in a
through
row.
this. I mean,
Okay.
she started off beating. Well, we'll start in the third round. Andreescu.
Mhm.
She ends up beating in the fourth. Is that the? That could have been the third round and fourth round, or third round. Kvitova, which
Mhm.
6-0, 6-3. Kvitova couldn't even find herself on the court, and that says a lot because she's won this title before, and she's a
Yeah.
very experienced grass player. Jabeur was just too
Many
good.
people were picking Kvitova to win this title.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
No.
she wasn't playing well. I mean, she was playing great before meeting Jabeur. And then she had to play Rybakina. This is a rematch. Ends up winning in 3 sets. Played really well there. Tough. Another Wimbledon champ. And then she goes on and having to play Zabalenka, who's already a Grand Slam champion, in 3 sets. And yeah, these are just like really hard matches she had to navigate through, or at least hard opponents to navigate through, and she actually did them very well. Just to get through those.
Yeah. It's
It's just
incredible. It
it was
was
incredible to watch. Yeah,
one of the best runs I've ever seen on the women's
yeah.
side, and
It's just
just on the
unfortunate.
quality of
Yeah.
opponent. And she was the underdog in every one of those matches against at least Kvitova, Rybakina, and
Zabalenka.
Sabalenka. She was the underdog in all three of those. And she played so freely in those matches, and it was just such a contrast to what happened in the final. And in the final, I mean, I texted you this. I thought that this was one of the worst quality matches I've seen in a long time in a final, men's or
Yeah,
women's, right?
I know.
And you could
That
feel the nerves. And it's mostly
yeah,
from Jabeur, right? Vondrousova also was a little bit nervous, but she controlled it better than
exactly.
Jabeur did.
Yeah.
And I mean that you got to give her credit for that too, right? That's part of the game, right? To be able to control your nerves and be able to play under pressure.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. That's it's well deserved, I guess. But it's a sad story for Jabor. I think
It's yeah,
I just hope she takes it. We'll see how she does in the coming tournaments, but I hope she is able to bounce back quickly because I mean, I think of it as a hiccup. It's happened too many times, I think, in the past, but other than that, that part of her game, just mental part in the final, everything else is just so good,
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think talking a little bit more on the technical side, for both the final and just in general from Jabeur, I wonder if part of the problem as well, apart from the nerves, is how different Vondrousova plays compared to the three, maybe even the four players that she played before, right? And Kvitova, Sabalenka, and Rybakina. Very similar players, all three of those, right? They hit the
Mm-hmm.
ball very hard. They're trying to hit winners more
Yeah.
than anything. And Jabeur is able to redirect so well, like kind of like Sinner does, right? That
Mm-hmm.
takes pace and really absorbs it well and take the ball early. She's able to do that. And I wonder if these like almost junk balls that are coming from Vondrousova a little bit, right? She throws so many
Just off
weird
base.
shots
Yeah.
from her, and she's coming from the lefty side as well. I wonder how much all of that also played a role,
Mm.
combined with the nerves. Like we'll never know, right? Because it's hard to really know if that's how much of the factor that was compared
Mm-hmm.
to the pressure. But it just seemed like she was also making a lot of bad decisions in general, right? Trying to end points too quickly and just not playing very smart, obviously because of the pressure. But it is interesting that contrast, right? How Vondrousova was so different from the other opponents that she played.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also is an issue for Elena Svitolina.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
because
That's true.
she was also playing unbelievable tennis before this too, or at least facing Vondrousova.
Yeah,
Vondrousova.
let's segue to the semifinalists. So Elina Svitolina, we probably thought was probably a better bet to make the final, right?
I
Than
thought so
than
too.
even Jabeur.
Yeah,
The way she was playing and the way she beat Azarenka and Swiatek back to back, right? Uh,
those are two fabulous matches. If other people haven't
Fantastic.
were not
I
able
mean,
to
one of
tune
the
into
better
it.
matches. I think honestly, I was telling you before we started recording, but it
Yeah,
felt to me like the women's event was better than the men's for everything except the final
except if
in the end, because there were so many good
great
matches on the
matches.
women's
Yeah.
side, that everyone was watching. We had I'm never gonna forget, like one of my biggest memories of watching Wimbledon this year is we had the split screens watching
Yeah,
Swiatek and
and Bencic,
Bencic in the quarterfinal, right? And or
Azarenka.
the round of 16, and Azarenka and Svitolina, right?
Right.
Side by side because it was so much drama in both matches,
Mm-hmm.
and Swiatek was saving match points in the second set, coming back to win, and that even wasn't the best match. So
Yeah.
that just tells you how good those two matches were. I mean, we had Jabeur and the first one that she played that was really good, Andreescu. Like that
Oh
match
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
amazing, had a lot of drama. It was so good. We had other like even smaller profile ones. I mean, Vekic against Sloane Stevens was a really good one. There was a big comeback in that match. There was just so many matches that were so good on the women's side, and it just like ended, obviously with the final that wasn't as great, but Svitolina, like you said, she was probably the story of this tournament. Not only because,
Yeah.
being a Ukrainian player, fighting hard to
Mm-hmm.
win for her country, like she was using that as a motivation, to bring a nice story back home in a difficult war at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, let's not
And
mention that she just had a baby recently, and
also that
she was a wild card in this event, right?
she was a wild card in
Yeah,
this event. And yeah, like you said, an inspiration with her story, just giving birth to a daughter, just not even what, a year ago or less.
yeah,
And she came back and she started losing in the Challenger tours a few matches,
it's
and she
amazing.
turned that around and won a tournament, got to the quarterfinals in Roland Garros, and now
Hmm.
to the semifinals in Wimbledon. I mean, what a story from Svitolina. I just gotta say, and moving forward, I think she's a factor. I think she
I
is a
think so.
factor.
She switched up her game, right? You were talking about this where I've never seen it. Like you said I've never seen her play this way before, right?
Yeah, it
And
was
it
crazy.
was
Like
great.
she just completely turned into Sabalenka for a moment. Like
Yeah.
like she was
She
going for
powered up.
for
She leveled
winners.
up,
She
right?
she powered up a lot,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah. It was fun to
and it
watch.
goes along with already her really good defensive skills and
Yeah.
just steady game, right? So it's just a great turnaround for her, and I think like I said, she's going to be a factor moving forward and in the hardcore season. I think she could win one of the tournaments leading there to the US Open. So it's going to be great to see her. And obviously on the other side is Sabalenka. She's the other semifinalist, and it's hard to sort of pinpoint what I really think about this result for Sabalenka because let's not make a mistake about it. She is the best player in the world right now on the women's side. I think there isn't too much question about it. If you look at her record this year, and she is pretty in front of Swiatek in the race for number one this year.
Mm.
She's about 700 points, I want to say, in front of Swiatek. So she has been the best player in the world, and it's been close with Swiatek, obviously, right there, right? They're the best two, and Rybakina right there as well. So that's the good part of it. But on the flip side, she has won a Grand Slam, so at least she has that in her in her resume, and she has that in her bag. But this is the second semifinal in a row that she's blown from a leading position and as the favorite, right? She lost that match against Mukova in Roland Garros, and she's done that in the past as well. I mean, that tournament that Raducanu won, right? Sabalenka lost in the semifinal there as well in the U.S.
Hmm.
Open, and she was also favored to win that tournament from there on. So who is the Sabalenka that's showing up, right? Is it worrying that she's getting to these stages and becoming the favorite and then not fulfilling it? That's something to keep an eye on moving forward, I think. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, her mental game has improved. Um, so I'm not sure if this particular loss was as a bit of a fluke, um, or if it was a mental thing. I mean, yeah, I think she's gonna be back. She like you said, she's top player in the world right now, number two, but like still in the rankings, in the race, the end of the year. I think. I mean, I don't remember, how did she do last year in the hard court season.
She
She
did
did
decently.
really
Yeah.
well, right?
I
Yeah.
think she went, so in Cincinnati, she reached either the quarterfinal or semifinal.
Hmm.
Because I remember seeing her when I was there, pretty sure. And US Open, she reached semifinal. I want to say her match with
Hmm.
Swiatek was. I think it
Right.
was a semifinal. And she pushed her. I think it went to three sets, if I remember correctly. So she did well on the hard court. Obviously, she won her Grand Slam on a hard court in the Australian Open. Um, and she went to the final in Indian Wells this year. Is it Indian Wells or Miami? It was Indian Wells because Miami was Kvitova that won it. Um,
You're right.
so she's done well on hard courts, and this is a part of the calendar where you would favor her, this new version of
I
her.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned. I don't know if it's. I think I just gotta wait to see more. but I'm a little concerned that this is now the second Grand Slam in a row that she's lost from a winning position,
Mm-hmm.
in being the favorite. Um, Now, granted, Mukova and
Sure.
Ons Jabeur both are amazing.
Yeah.
They have amazing talent, so it's you got to also they deserve credit for that as well, right? Those are great players. So we'll see moving
Yeah.
forward.
I think we'll have to get back to the listeners on that one, just to see
Exactly.
how she does in the next few tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, congratulations to Vondrousova. Great result. Do we think that we're going to see more of Vondrousova moving
I
forward?
honestly don't know.
Yeah, I feel the
I,
same.
I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, it's
let's
hard to
see
predict. I mean,
if she can build some confidence out of this. She definitely has some game. I just don't know how she would do if some of these top players are playing the at their very best. I just haven't
yeah,
seen if she's able to hang with that.
I agree. I feel like on the hard courts, I think she might struggle a little bit. Um, I feel like her game is pretty well suited for clay. Um, and she's reached that Roland Garros final before. I think she's probably with this confidence maybe will be a factor there. I don't know about the hard courts. We'll see. But last year Rybakina won Wimbledon, and look at that did to her. Like she wasn't really a top player, but the time that she won Wimbledon,
That is true.
and she became this great player. Now,
Yeah,
also
she
to
did
the
play
eye test,
amazing in that tournament.
yeah, to
Like
the eye test, you
I
can see that her game is huge. So it's a
yeah,
little
it's
different,
a little
right,
different, I think.
from Vondrousova. So I gotta see a little bit more of her to see what she can do. But credit to her, she now is number 5 in the race with this
It's
result.
crazy, huh?
So she is basically the 5th best player in the world this year, just this calendar year. So that's a great result for her.
That's gonna help her a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's gonna be interesting moving forward. Okay,
All
you
right.
want to wrap up the men's and women's finals, and maybe let's talk about some of the bigger stories of Wimbledon. So anything that um, we want to sort of discuss apart from the finals and the finals weekend from this tournament that you want to highlight before we end the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can note, you know, we can note some key players that had some like notable moments, some breakout moments. I'd say Chris Eubanks was one of them.
Yes,
I did not expect him to get that far, and it was just really funny to hear how he kind of was dreaming about this stage in the second week of Wimbledon just a few weeks before in a public interview. So yeah, I was pretty
he
impressed
made
by
it
his
true.
game too. I mean, he's hitting big. Talk about someone who has easy power. I just felt like he was just blasting the ball. Um, yeah, I don't know. What are
And
your thoughts
it
on on
felt,
that?
yeah, no, yeah, it felt repeatable to me, like what he was
I think
doing.
so too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic story because he's not like Alcaraz or Rune, who are like teenagers, becoming adults now. He's already
Yeah.
27 years old, and
Right.
he has breaking through this year. I mean, the previous result that he had that was really good before Wimbledon was that quarterfinal run that he had in Miami, right, where he lost to Medvedev, who we also did lose to in Wimbledon.
In Wimbledon. Yeah.
Um, but he pushed Medvedev. It took 5 sets,
Yep.
and I think he was up 2-1 before Medvedev came back to win that. So
Yep.
he had
He
a
was.
fantastic tournament, and he really is a player that has a big game, has that one-handed backhand too, but it's not a liability like other players, right? You cannot target his one-handed backhand the same way you can target Tsitsipas'
Tsitsipas.
one-handed
Yeah.
backhand, right? He can really hurt you with it. And I think from what I've heard, other like pundits talk about, mostly I think Gil Gross mentioned this in his
Mm.
show. He really improved a lot his backhand from what it used to be. So
Really.
before
Hmm.
it really was kind of like Tsitsipas where you can just target it. But he's also like his shot tolerance has improved a lot more. His movement, fitness, all that has gotten better. Um, and he just is a fantastic story. And I'm looking forward to see what he can do in the U.S. Open swing.
Yeah, same here. Um, he's exciting player to watch. Yeah,
Yeah, he's one of the best
yeah,
stories of Wimbledon for
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
along with obviously Elina Svitolina as well.
Oh, yeah,
I think those two
absolutely.
are the biggest stories, right? We talked about her already,
Yeah,
and Eubanks. Those two stories to me are the bigger ones, right? Um, I have a few others that I'll just rapid fire through.
go
So I
for it.
had I want to. I just feel bad for Andy Murray because
He had a great. Oh, he was so close.
he was so close, and it feels like it's been like this so many
Every
times
time, right?
that he's
Yeah.
been so close, right?
That was like a
And he had
Tsitsipas.
another five setter, and he just lost right at the end against Tsitsipas. And before that, even Thiem against Tsitsipas had a five setter. And he also could have won that. It was very close. So two guys that I'm really hoping that they could actually
Come back
you know
and break
have
through.
have a nice
Yeah, come back
final
and
run,
yeah,
or in the case of Thiem, just stay back, right? Because he's still young. But Murray just one last hurrah, and I felt
yeah,
like Wimbledon would have been a great place for him because he's done so well on the grass before. Um,
yeah.
and he really had a good draw as well. If he could have beat Tsitsipas,
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean, he
man.
had a great draw, all the
Yeah.
way to facing. He would have faced Eubanks, so maybe he would have lost to
Eubanks.
Eubanks from what we know. But on paper, you're good with a draw like that, right? So
Yeah. I mean, he's a great returner, so
yeah.
you never know.
So I felt a little bit bad that he couldn't get over the finish line there against Tsitsipas. Credit to Tsitsipas, he did play well in that match
Hmm.
and got it done. But just that's something that I thought was a big story there. I want to say Mirra Andreeva. We keep talking
Oh
about her.
right.
She's been doing great things. I mean, she's a youngster. She's like 15, 16 years old. And she already looks like she has a lot of game. So she is someone to look out for, looking moving forward as one of the top prodigies to
Hmm.
really, you know, be excited about. Um, I had Milos Raonic as well mentioned here that he's back in this tournament. I don't know he's gonna be. I don't actually know he's gonna play anymore. I think he got hurt or
Oh
something
no,
again.
really?
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't know if his comeback is completely real. We'll see. But apart from that, I think the biggest one that stands out to me is Matteo Berrettini. I mean,
That's a
the
huge
tournament,
story for him. Yeah.
the tournament that he had, we saw how he was crying in that tournament, the warm-up tournament before Queens, and Stuttgart. He played the first tournament there, the first match there, and he ended the court crying because I think he got hurt again in just that tournament. He was
Hmm.
already hurt. He
He's
was coming
already
back
hurt.
from
Yeah.
injury, and he got hurt again, and he lost that match, and he just looked completely out of it. And he came into Wimbledon, and I completely ignored him from the draw. Like I thought he was going to lose first round against Sonego because he was actually the guy he lost to in that grass event as well. So I was like, I think Sonego's winning this, but what a turnaround. He
Hmm.
had some really good wins. He beat Alex de Minaur, which, nobody's talking about de Minaur because he lost
He
early, right?
played
But
amazing the
he played
tournament
amazing in
before.
Queens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the guy who Alcaraz beat
Almost.
in the final,
Yeah.
right? He beat Rune en route to that final in Queens.
Yeah.
So de Minaur was playing fantastic tennis, and that's where I thought, wow, Berrettini might be actually coming back. So wins against de Minaur, and then he completely
Took care of
dominated
Anders
Zverev,
van der Sar.
particularly on serve.
Yeah.
And what an amazing performance. So I am glad to see Berrettini back because he's been going through a long process with his injuries and all that. Remember last year when he was one of the favorites for Wimbledon and
Hmm.
he got
And he
COVID
got.
right
Yeah.
before the tournament?
That was unfortunate, man.
So bad. After winning Stuttgart and Queens back to back,
And
he
he had
looked like
gotten
he
to
was
the
going to repeat
final
into the
of
final
Wimbledon before that. Yeah.
the year before. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And he looked
just.
in position to do it again
Yeah,
last
he was
year.
playing well. Yeah, right.
And COVID happened for
Hmm.
him, and he had to withdraw from there, and then just had a run of bad injuries after that. So it's great to see that he's back in form, and it's going to be fun to see him, maybe, bust some brackets because he's not ranked very high at the moment. So he could be a dangerous player to face for the higher seeds
Oh, you're right. He
in
wasn't even
the U.S.
seated.
Open swing. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't even seated in Wimbledon. So
So that's one of the bigger things that resonated with me from Wimbledon. The last thing for me is just men's tennis and uh, the American men's. Um, a huge disappointment on the whole, right? If you take out Chris Eubanks, it's crazy that he was the one that actually showed up in this tournament, but there was a lot of expectations and for Taylor Fritz,
yeah,
for Tiafo, for Tommy Paul, maybe a little bit less so. Even Maxime Cressy, who maybe you wouldn't pick to go like super far, but maybe win a few rounds.
right.
He lost in the first round. Um, some people like me had Sebastian Corda going to the final. I do not know what I was thinking when I did
I
that.
didn't. I didn't stop you
but,
either.
but he lost in the first round. So just all around, right? It was just a disappointing tournament for the men on Wimbledon. So let's see if they could turn it around for the U.S. Open swing. Um, Also, Coco Gauff, she lost first round. Now, granted, she lost to Sophia Cannon, who kind of got inspired in that first round and actually played in fantastic. So I don't know what to think about that. But obviously, for me on the women's side, the biggest disappointment was Mukova because I had her winning the tournament. So I
I
was
think I
very
had the
shocked.
same thing, which was just
But I will say again, we said
yeah.
about Alcaraz
I
and we
think
said about Iga. She did not play a warm-up tournament before
into
the
yeah.
before Wimbledon. And if your name is not Novak Djokovic,
You
you
should
better
be.
play a warm-up event before going into Wimbledon because that transition
Yeah,
from clay to Wimbledon is very
it's
hard.
rough. Yeah.
It's very, very hard. So I think I should have known that was going to be a problem, but that was one of the bigger disappointments. But I think she is going to be back. I think she has the game, and if she stays healthy, I think she's going to be back. Um, but yeah, I think those were the bigger stories for me. Anything else before we move on?
Um, hmm. I think that's it. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
let's move
So
on.
one more thing before we finish our show. Let's talk about power rankings. Let's talk about power rankings
Going
overall,
into yeah. Let's
and
do it.
then also going into the hardcore season. Um, so what do you think? Who are the best players? So right now, if we go by ranking, let me just pull this up right now because I had it open. Um, let's start with the men. ATP singles. The top 5 players in the world right now by ranking are Carlos Alcaraz,
Hmm.
number 1, Novak Djokovic, number 2, Daniil Medvedev, number 3, Casper Ruud, number 4, and Stefanos Tsitsipas, number 5.
Yeah.
Uh, do you agree with the overall power rankings being the same as the rankings right now?
Um, I would not put Tsitsipas up there, but other than that, it's reasonable.
Who are your top 5? Do you have in mind who are your top 5? I can tell you what mine are. Um, so I
Go for it.
have the first 3 are the same. So I think I switched my order a little bit. So I have number 1 Novak Djokovic still, just because of he has the 2 slams, and at the majors he is tied with Alcaraz. So I think overall I give him just by a tiny bit. I give him the edge in the power rankings, but it's a toss up. Honestly, it's one A and 1B for me. But it's Djokovic number 1, Alcaraz number 2, um, Daniil Medvedev number 3. I have Yannick Sinner at number 4, and
Interesting.
I have Holger Rune at number 5 in my power
Okay.
rankings.
Interesting. Yeah, I have. It's very similar for me. The top three are the same. So Alcaraz, Djokovic, Medvedev. I have Rune and then Sinner, and then Casper, and
At
then
6.
Rublev. Yeah, it just keeps going.
We
Yeah,
have Casper and Rublev higher than Tsitsipas, which is interesting because Casper was it was pretty horrendous before before the
the
beginning of the
French.
season,
Well, the
but
French kind of.
he did
Yeah,
make the final of the French again.
yeah.
Um,
Which
so he had a
honestly,
good
I think
tournament
he's
there.
just that clay court specialist, right?
Yeah, especially in the 250s.
Yeah.
Though not anymore, right?
Well, today was an exception. Yeah.
Today was an exception. He lost to Rublev in a 250 clay event.
So what happens when
Why are we
other
playing
people
clay
play.
events
Why is Rublev playing a
after Wimbledon?
250?
True. Why are we having clay events at all right
Rublev
now?
is like, if Casper's playing this, maybe I should play it too.
Yeah. He was like, I'll play second best here, but he actually won.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I kind of agree there. Interesting that you put Rune ahead of Sinner. I think it's probably because of the recent results, right?
I think
Um,
it's yeah. This is results based. I think. I mean, if I were,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think I went Sinner just because he reached the semifinal and
Hmm.
he has a slightly better year, I think, than Rune, just by a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, because neither of them have won the Masters events, and Sinner for me has been consistent throughout. Like he played well throughout the entire hard court season, and then
Yeah.
Clay, he had a good result early. Then he got sick, and he had the poor result came at Roland Garros, right?
Hmm.
Um, so in that sense, Rune did better, but I think it's a toss up between the two, honestly.
Yeah.
I think similarly to Djokovic and Alcaraz, where they're kind of 1A
They're a
and
bit of
1B,
yeah
I think
toss up.
Sinner and Rune are kind of the same there, yeah. But we agree that they're both ahead at Tsitsipas and Ruud, essentially.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Agree. Agree.
on the grass, I kind of did a little bit of a like, just grass court, and I put Alcaraz number one there. I mean, he was
Hmm.
12-0 on the grass season, and by the end of it, he felt like the best player on grass, especially because of his route to the final. It wasn't like a cupcake, you
Yeah.
know. He went through the fire to get to that final and beat the guy who was the four-time defending champion. So you got to go number one Alcaraz, Djokovic number two, Medvedev three. I put Sinner four, and I put Eubanks at number five for the grass season because he won that one tournament before, and I think off all the quarterfinalists, he felt to me the most impressive of them. Rune was
Hmm.
also a quarterfinalist. Rublev was also a quarterfinalist there as well, but I felt like Eubanks got closer to reaching that semifinal. So to me, he was like the fifth best grass court player of the season. Agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we agree there. What about on the women's side?
Ooh,
So
these are tough.
overall power rankings. I think the first three are definitely the easiest. Then it gets a little
Then it
murky.
gets
So let me also say for the women's what the current rankings are. So number one is Iga by 500 points. So pretty close to Sabalenka there at number two. Then it drops off a bit to Rybakina at number three. And Pegula is number four, very close to Rybakina, actually. Closer than I would have expected, honestly. And then Caroline Garcia is number five in the rankings
oh,
right now.
interesting.
And just outside there is Jabeur at six, Coco Gauff, then Kvitova, then Zachary at nine, and Vondrousova at 10. So
Oof.
what do you think in terms of your power rankings for top five?
Um. Uh, yeah. Well, maybe mine is a bit more biased. I think Iga is up there, and
Hmm.
Sabalenka's up there. Rybakina. Um. I think based on the like the actual level of play, I think Jabeur should be very close to being up there.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm also gonna put Kvitova in there, just from
Okay.
yeah.
She's
Doesn't
close. I mean,
she's
she's
close.
eight right
She's
now.
like behind Coco, right, or something. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good power ranking. For me, I have Sabalenka at number one, just because she has slightly better results overall than Iga this year. They both have a slam, but Sabalenka's been a little bit more consistent on the tour. And Swiatek I got number two, and then Rybakina number three. She does not have a slam, but I put her over Vondrousova just because she's been consistent the entire year.
Wait, who?
Rybakina.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I
Yeah,
think
so she doesn't have
she's
a
been
slam
very
this year, but
consistent.
she's been very consistent, reaching finals in a lot of big events. Vondrousova, I put her number four, mostly because I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt because she's a Grand Slam champion this year. So she's there right now, but she probably will drop off if she doesn't keep this up for me. And at number five, I put Ons Jabeur. And similarly to you, I think her level is up there. She had a similar start to the season as Casper Ruud in a way.
She also had an injury, a weird injury.
Hers was a little bit more driven by injury. But she was playing through it in a way, and it probably wasn't the best idea. Yeah. So she started a little slow, but she's picked it up, and she played pretty well in Roland Garros, played well parts of the clay season, and obviously played great in Wimbledon until the final. So I think overall, I still think she is in my top five. So I got Sabalenka, Swiatek, Rybakina, Vondrousova, and Jabeur. And in terms of grass top five, I actually went Jabeur number one, honestly. No results there in the end, but what she did to get to the final, what she did to get to the final, I think her level on the grass was the highest in the women's side. Number two, Sabalenka on the grass. Number three, Vondrousova, because she won the title. Four, I went Rybakina, and five, I went Svitolina for the grass for my power ranking. So different from the overall power ranking, I would say. And then I didn't have Iga in my top five.
Oh, wow.
She just by a hair. She would have been sixth for me. So and I think she's really improved a lot compared to last year. So I think this is a really good season for her and to build upon this for next year.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, for the hard courts, who are your contenders to watch? For me, the top five on the men's and the women's, I'll start with the men's. It has to be number one, Alcaraz. We're going into a part of the season where he is the defending champion in the U.S. Open, right? So with that being the case and the fact that he just won Wimbledon, he has to be number one for me as contender for U.S. Open and even the smaller events. Number two, I actually put Medvedev ahead of Djokovic.
Oh, wow.
And partly because I'm projecting a little bit. It's not necessarily who's better right now. Obviously, I have Djokovic as my number one in the power rankings, but I think projecting moving forward, my reasoning is Medvedev has had the best start of the year of his career. He has won a bunch of tournaments this year. He's definitely been the third best player of the year for sure. On the tour, he's been the second best player, on the smaller events, behind Alcaraz. And I think, he's won all three of the tournaments. He's won Cincinnati, he's won Montreal, he's won the US Open. So I think he's going to go in with a lot of confidence. And this is a part of the season where Djokovic typically does not do as well compared to other parts. I mean, he's won all these events, don't get me wrong. But but I think, recently speaking, right, I feel like Medvedev has been really good, and combined with what he has done at the beginning of the season and what he did in his worst surfaces, still reaching, winning a title on clay, reaching the semifinal on grass. I think that means that his level is very high. So for me, he's my second favorite as long as he doesn't run into Alcaraz. That's the only caveat. I don't think he can beat Alcaraz the same way that I think Djokovic can and Sinner can, and even some of the other contenders. He's number 2. Djokovic obviously number 3 for me, and Sinner 4, obviously. Let's not forget that Sinner played that classic match with Alcaraz last year
That was insane.
at the U.S. Open,
Oh my God.
which honestly still is the best match I've seen in a very long
Yeah.
time. It was still better than this final of Djokovic and Alcaraz. And I honestly, I think it's not even particularly close. That match was
It's
just pure shot
insane.
making for 5 sets. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely insane.
I went into like the morning hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was watching that
It's like
match
3
until like
a.m.
3
or
in the
something.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just crazy tennis. So I think Sinner, he has what it takes to win that tournament. Um,
Mhm.
and then my number 5 is one that's going to be a little more surprising. Maybe not. I put Tiafo as my number 5
No.
contender. So over a bunch of
Tiafoe.
guys, over Rune, over
Interesting.
Tsitsipas, over even Rude, who made the final. Um, I just think the crowd there is so good for him. I think he does so well when the crowd is cheering for him. And he is so good on hard courts. And he beat Rafa last year there. And he pushed
Mhm.
Alcaraz to 5 sets. I think he does have what it takes to go very far. So those are my top 5 contenders. What about you?
So I number 1 for me is Alcaraz. I think he can keep building upon it. He looks healthy.
Yep.
He looks like he's having fun. The fans love him. I put number 2 as Djokovic, actually, too. Or no, you put Medvedev, actually. For me, Djokovic, I think he's going to be hungry. He hasn't played a U.S. tournament in a long time because of the ban, and he's finally getting his chance.
That's true.
Yeah, and actually, do you know when that ban, I don't remember when it actually is official, but it is official. I think he can come back and start playing Cincinnati,
Pretty
right?
sure. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure. I don't know if
I
he
know
can go
he's
into Canada though, because that was a U.S.
Canada.
thing that
Oh,
got lifted.
really?
So I'm not sure about Canada. Like I just don't know. Maybe he can
Yeah, I
play.
have
I
to
just
look
don't
that
know.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's Toronto this year, I think, right? So
Toronto. Yeah,
yeah, let's see. I think he's gonna be hungry, and
yeah.
he's gonna enjoy playing in the States. And I think this Wimbledon loss is gonna affect him a little bit. It's just gonna he broke his racket out of frustration. I think he's not happy that he lost that. So I think he's gonna really try hard these next to at least end this year with another Grand Slam in his number 24. He's definitely gonna be looking for it. So he's gonna prepare. At number 3,
Yeah, and if
yeah,
there's something before you go, keep going. Before if there is something that will motivate Djokovic
it's
is
that
having
24.
a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Having a challenge. He does so well when he is maybe not an underdog, but he just has a target to go for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and now Alcaraz is the guy everybody's talking about, and he's gonna want to prove that it's not his time yet. So it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be interesting to see. So I think you're right. He's gonna be very motivated.
Yeah. Number 3, I actually have Sinner on here. I think Sinner, he plays really well on the hard courts. If he has his game, I think he can go really far. And with the semifinal result, I think even though it was a little disappointing the way it ended with Djokovic, I think he has to be proud that he got there and was able to. It was a pretty straightforward draw for him, but the fact that he just got there, it's very important that he was
Yeah.
able to do that, just mentally. And then
You know
number
who also got a good draw that didn't get there? Casper Ruud.
Casper. Well, speaking
So
of Casper, so I have Medvedev next, which he's performed well in hard court, so I think that's gonna. And I actually have number 5. I have Casper Ruud. Despite his 250 loss, I think he's a little underrated. He's under the radar in these hardcore tournaments, but he hits the ball very clean, and he can get pretty far in some of these tournaments. So I'm putting him there. As a
Let's
runner-up,
not
but
forget he is
close
the
number.
he is the Wimbledon defending. Oh, sorry, the U.S. Open
U.S.
defending
Open.
finalist.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. He somehow sneaks in there. Sneaks into
three-time Grand
finals.
Slam finalist.
It's something to party about,
Hmm.
at a weekend concert.
Exactly.
And I actually had number 6 and number 7. I had even though we're not going there, but I'll just mention de Minaur and Berrettini. I think they're gonna
Mm.
make a move.
Yeah, I think those are Diminar. Interesting.
Yeah,
Did not have him on my radar, but he's playing well.
he's playing
Um,
well. I think these.
but Berrettini, I'm very intrigued because he has made the semifinals before at hardcore events, right? At hardcore
Mhm.
slams. He did it both. I want to say he did it at US Open once, and he definitely did it at Australia. So he can play on the hard courts. It is his worst surface, but that doesn't mean anything because he's good on all surfaces.
Yeah,
So I think he's going to be someone to watch for sure. Even if he didn't make it in my top five, someone to watch.
yeah, he did get to the semifinal back in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one that he lost to Rafa, right? I think it was.
Mm.
I think I'm remembering that one. Um,
Yep, you're right.
okay. Yeah, I think I remember that.
Lost in straight sets.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that match. But yeah, I think that's a good top five. How about the women's?
Ooh, I'll let you go first on this one.
Okay. So my top one, I mean, we've talked about this already, that on the hard courts, Sabalenka is probably the person to beat right now on the hard courts. So I put her number one. Number two, I put Elena Rybakina, just because of
Mm-hmm.
how she has taken a step forward this year. And she's going to be pretty hungry. She hasn't won a slam yet this year, and she would have expected to be a slam champion this year already with the way she's playing. So I think she's going to be pretty hungry. Obviously, Iga, she's the defending U.S. Open champion, but she did look uncomfortable in that tournament,
Mm-hmm.
en route to the final, and she got pretty dominated in the two warm-up events last year. So she's number three, but I'm keeping an eye on her as potentially being upset in some of these events. Um, Number four, I put Jabeur, mostly out of respect of her
Mm-hmm.
uh, final appearance in the U.S. Open last year. But similarly to Iga, I
Yeah.
can see her being vulnerable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Number five, I put Kvitova as
Ooh,
my top five. Um, and the reason is
I'm
because,
so
I mean, she
happy.
won Miami. I know, you did not expect that. But honestly, she's been one of the best players of the year.
Yeah.
Um, but she's by ranking, if you look at the race, she's been in the top, at least six or seven. And she won Miami this year. And she was
Yeah.
very, very dominant in that tournament. So she can do that. So I would actually give her a big chance of winning one of
Mm-hmm.
the three tournaments, the US Open, Cincinnati,
Mm.
or Montreal this year.
You can keep
Um,
going. She has more. Yeah.
she has more what?
She has more. You can talk about
You
it
can
for
win
more.
more stuff to the Washington, the City Open as well.
Okay.
No, yeah. I think she's somebody to watch. And another person that didn't make it in I have two players that I'm mentioning here that didn't make it into
The top five.
my top five, but I think are worth mentioning. Caroline Garcia.
Oh
We
wow.
saw how she played last year at the U.S. Open,
Yeah.
and we went live. And off the matches that we saw live, she was the most impressive,
She
men's or
was
women's. She was the most impressive. And we saw Iga, we
unbelievable.
saw Alcaraz, we saw a bunch of people.
She
She was
reminded.
so
Yeah.
impressive.
So impressive. Yeah, she reminded us of that crazy Raducanu U.S. Open run
Yeah,
back in the day. Yeah, she
it
was
was looking
just
like that.
playing so well.
And I think she's somebody that, hasn't had the best year. she hasn't had a bad year, but she's not had,
Yeah.
top 10 year. And I think this is where things started really looking forward for her, right? Actually, there's a
Yeah,
tournament
she
in
she
two.
ended up winning
Go ahead.
that year-end championship too, right? At the end.
She did.
Yeah.
Yes. And this
So
is the point of the season where she started playing really
really
good.
well. Yeah.
Um, it started when she beat Iga in the tournament in Warsaw, which happens next week. So that's where she's the defending champion there, and that's where the big run for her started. So
There
we'll
you
see
go.
now if Caroline Garcia can repeat that. And obviously, we know that she is the defending champion in Cincinnati as well.
Yeah, she won a
So
few tournaments in a row, from what I
yeah,
remember. Yeah, last
so
one.
she was very good last year, particularly from this point on. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
see if that repeats itself, and that's she's somebody to watch. Madison Keys to me is another one to watch.
Mm.
Maybe not to win necessarily the biggest event, but she got pretty far in Cincinnati last year. She beat Iga in the warm up event,
Mm.
and she plays her best tennis at the majors. And she's been the reason why she's still ranked high is because she disappears from the tour for the most part, but she goes pretty far at the majors, right? And she did it
Yeah.
again this year. I mean, I think she reached the
Wimbledon, she did
quarterfinal at
pretty
Wimbledon,
well.
right?
Yeah.
So I think she got far in a few other Grand Slams as well. Maybe not Roland Garros, but I think Australia she did pretty well as well,
Mm.
if I remember correctly. But and even last year she played a few Grand Slam events that were pretty good. So she's somebody to watch. I mean, I don't think she'll win because her game is too erratic to keep it going for 7 matches, but she can take out some serious people if she finds a good run of form. So those are my players to watch. I think I'll give another shout out to Mukova as well, because I think what she
Mm.
did in Roland Garros is very repeatable for her. And I honestly thought that we would see it on grass. I'm a little disappointed it didn't happen there, but
It
um,
seemed like that game would translate so well into grass,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. But I think she could still do it on the hard courts as well. I think she
Yeah.
has a really good game, and she might be somebody to watch as well. But that's my group.
Wow.
How about
Very
you?
strong. Yeah, I have to agree. That's a great play. And great. There's so many. The women's field is so deep. It seems like a lot
Yeah.
of these players could do it. Um, yeah. So for my top five, I have Rybakina as number one. Um, and I chose her just because I think she's gonna be hungry. Like
Yeah.
you said, she hasn't had the slam. She's had great results. It's just she's she ran into a she ran into a Jabeur, which was like super hot, right?
Yeah.
um, so I think her game. She has a big game, so I think
Yeah.
someone to watch out for.
She reached
Zabalenka,
the Australian Open final and she won Indian Wells.
yeah,
So
yeah, no,
definitely.
of course, right. Um, and then Zabalenka, obviously, she's gonna be hitting the ball hard. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how things play out with her. Number three, I have Caroline Garcia. Actually,
Oh,
yeah, I just from last year, I think she can replicate those things, and just knowing that she did so well during this period last year, I think hopefully she'll get some inspiration.
yeah.
And I think these next few weeks are very this whole U.S. Open series and yeah, playing in Toronto. Well, for them it's gonna be Montreal this year, but
Hmm.
these series of hardcore tournaments just it seems like you can get a rhythm, if you get in a few matches here. I think she can find her form. And then we have Ons Jabeur as number four. I think she can do amazing things in the hard courts. I think it might take her a little bit of time to get over this loss, but hopefully not too long. Maybe another week or two.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because she's ecstatic, and I think the New York crowd will love her if she just plays the way she's been playing. And then number five, I have Kvitova, just like how you have. She's done well in the hard courts. Here, I don't have Iga, which is kind of crazy. In the top
Yeah.
five, I actually have her as number six, and then behind that, I have Mukova. So, and like you said, you put Keys in there. She's very well capable of doing so. There's so many players I
Yeah.
think that can just step up their game.
We did.
You never know.
It's interesting that we did have, other than Iga, like if you switch Iga and Caroline Garcia, we had the exact same order as well for players. This was not planned at all,
No.
but we had the
no.
exact same order, except for Iga for me and my list at number 3
Did you
and
have
Caroline Garcia for you.
Rybakina as one? I think you had Sabalenka.
Oh, wait, you had
Yeah.
right. You have Rybakina
Yeah.
as number 1. Yeah, you're right. But very similar list. And I think
But-
we agree that Sabalenka
but I have to
and
admit-
Rybakina
Yeah.
are the top 2,
Right,
definitely.
Yeah. But I have to admit, I think Iga is gonna sneak in there at some point. From one of these events, I think she's gonna perform very high level.
She has deservingly so, right?
Yeah.
Earned the title of best player in the world.
Absolutely,
I think Sabalenka has been the best this year, but in a 52-week period, Iga's still the best. The ranking says it, right? And she is the defending champion in the U.S. Open, so it's still going to be difficult to beat her. But I think there is competition. I think it's not as. I think Alcaraz is a heavy favorite over everybody else in the hardcourt swing moving forward. I think obviously Djokovic because he's a GOAT. It's right. Like he's going to be a contender, but I think Alcaraz just with the confidence that he has, he feels like such an overwhelming favorite now, moving forward for the majority of these events. But in the women's, I can see a lot of people, right? Even though we have Sabalenka and Rybakina as clear 1 and 2 for me on the hard courts, I think we have a lot of people that can really do make some noise there, for sure. Cool. Well, that was fun. Power rankings. I think we agreed on the majority. We had some differences, but overall, we did agree on a lot of things. So with that, we can wrap up our Wimbledon discussion, and let's end the podcast talking about what's happening next before we record our next show. So things that are happening, lots of stuff is right. Things that are happening until the next podcast. So this week, actually, post Wimbledon, we had 2 interesting events going on that are not like official tournaments, but it's the UTS tournament.
Ultimate Tennis
you
Showdown.
Remind me what there you go. Ultimate Tennis Showdown. Thank you, Dish. Ultimate Tennis Showdown is kind of like an exhibition type of event that was created by Patrick Martoglu.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a team-based.
I have no clue how this works.
It's kind of weird.
We really should know this, but
well, it's just
it's
it's
not real tennis, guys.
It's not a real. Come on.
It's like pickleball. I'm just joking. No, it's not.
I gotta say though, there's been some highlights from that event that are ridiculous.
They are ridiculous.
The ones that I sent you from Ben Shelton are just absurd.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Ben had some ridiculous reflex volleys.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's a tournament that
we didn't mention this. I just want to mention Alcaraz's reflexes at net during Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, we can go back to the Ultimate Tennis Showdown. Yeah.
Back to the Ultimate Tennis Showdown. No, it's like a bit of an exhibition type event, and it's team based. And players have nicknames, so you'll see instead of seeing Alcaraz you're not even gonna see Alcaraz in this tournament.
No.
But instead of seeing, say, Tiafoe, Francis Tiafoe on the scoreboard, you would see Big Foe, his nickname. Mm-hmm. And similar other nicknames like that. I think Ben Shelton was
the Mountain.
The Mountain, the giant, the Mountain. Yeah, the Mountain. So a little fun tournament, I guess. They were trash talking as well, and a little bit more like the American sports kind of feel, where there's trash talk and all that.
Interviews and the players are mic'd up, I think, between changeovers. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit more insight into what they're thinking and stuff during the matches, which is interesting too. which is nice to
Yeah,
hear.
it's an interesting thing. The only thing I'll say is that we just have too many events, too many weird events, and we really, as tennis, really needs to come together and figure out what's the best way to make team events make sense with the calendar, because the calendar is getting even longer and longer. Masters are getting 2 weeks long now. There's too much. There's too much going on. That's all I'm going to say about that. Apart from the UTS tournament that's happening in LA, there's also the Hopman Cup. So this is a kind of like, again, another team type event. This one is by country, similar to the Davis Cup, but it's men's and women's mixed. And this week there was, I want to say, 3 teams and 2 brackets, so 6 teams total competing. And Carlos Alcaraz was there, actually.
There you go.
And he played. Spain did lose; they didn't make it to the final. But Alcaraz did win both of his matches, and he was just putting on exhibition shots.
Yeah.
And he played David
forehands.
Goffin.
Oof.
Oh yeah, deflating forehands
Yeah.
for Goffin. He was just like I can't believe what I'm seeing here. And then he also beat Trojic. But yeah, that tournament was going on this week as well. And apart from that, real tournaments, we also had 5 of them. We have Newport, and this is at the Tennis Hall of Fame. We had Bastad, we had Budapest, Palermo, and Gstaad. And I'm not gonna say all the players, but I will say that Manarino won in Newport. I want to say that Rublev, importantly, beat Casper Ruud, the ATP 250 clay god. He beat him on that tournament. So that is almost as big of an upset as beating Rafa at Roland Garros. Okay, it's kind of close. Not quite, but close.
It's a completely different level, but I understand the analogy.
It's a different level. It's similar.
Yeah.
So good result there for Rublev. But yeah, those are kind of the bigger results there. Next week there's going to be 4 more tournaments, 2 men's, 2 women's. And it's going to be in Hamburg and Umag for the men. These are tournaments that typically have pretty good players. Alcaraz has played that tournament before, Sinner as well, but those players are not going to be there this time. And then there's also Warsaw and Lausanne for the women. And Warsaw is the event that's in Poland. I haven't seen if Iga's in the draw or not. I assume she will be, though, because it's her local event. And Caroline Garcia is the defending champion there. I assume she also is going to play, but I haven't checked. And then after that is going to be the week after is going to be a tournament in Austria, another one in Prague. Then there's the combined men's and women's event in Washington, the City Open. And then there's going to be 2 other tournaments in Los Cabos for the men, San Jose for the women. That is all that is going to be happening before we record another episode. So the next time we meet, we are going to recap all of that, not in like a ton of detail, but we'll highlight where some of the bigger stories that came out of those smaller events and see if that impacts a little bit what we see as possible contenders for the U.S. Open swing. So we're going to recap all of that in the next podcast, and then also preview the tournament in Canada. So the men are going to be playing this year in Toronto, and the women are going to be playing in Montreal. And when we record next, we will preview that event. And we are recording next time on August 4th-ish, I want to say. Okay.
Yeah.
We're recording August 4th. So there's a little bit of time from the next time we meet. But those are the things that we are going to be talking about. And with that, we are ready to end our show. You want to close us off, Jish?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app so that you can receive all the newest episodes as they come live. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and most other major podcasting platforms. So leave us a rating and a review. We would appreciate your feedback to make this podcast the best it can be. We're also on Twitter and Reddit at Point by Point Pod, as well as YouTube at Point by Point Tennis Podcast. And that wraps up another episode. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see
Thanks for listening, and see you in a few weeks.
Yep. Take care.
See you, everybody.